British court regarding a Gitmo detainee is a very serious blow to Tony Blair and George Bush personally and to the Obama administration. The plaintiff in this case, who alleged that he was captured in Afghanistan by U.S. forces who took him to Morocco for torture and then was shipped to Guantanamo Bay for more torture, has now proven to the satisfaction of a British court that his allegations are true. Mr. Blair personally and Bush administration officials and Obama administration officials all denied this. Now a court has found to the contrary. We will soon see who will pay for what was done to him, including a savage mutilation of parts of his body. A military tribunal in Guantanamo Bay released him, having found no evidence to charge him or to keep him confined. Joining me now, a great defender of freedom who monitors all these things for us at Freedom Watch, Jacob Hornberger. Jake is the founder and president of the Future of Freedom Foundation. Jake, welcome back to Freedom Watch.
Thank you, Judge. It's always nice to be back.
This is a very interesting case that you and I and a lot of people have been watching. His protestations were lurid, and without getting into the details of them, a British court has now found that they were all true. He was captured by American troops in Afghanistan. They did bring him to Morocco, where he was savagely tortured, including bodily mutilation. He was then brought to Guantanamo Bay, where he was tortured again by American military. He was then brought before a military tribunal, which freed him and let him go because the government had no evidence against him. Question, where does it go from here, and how much more does it take for the American public and the world to learn what is truly happening, what our government is truly doing to innocent human beings?
Well, this is the model, a horror story of the war on terrorism. I mean, here's a guy that they released because they have no evidence, which is pretty powerful proof that he's innocent, and yet they subject him to how many years, 7 or 8 years of incarceration, the brutal torture, the body savagery that you were talking about in Morocco, where the CIA turned him over for that purpose. And then when they finished with him there, whisked him over to Guantanamo. And let's not forget also that the U.S. government, during the entire time that the British courts were litigating this, was threatening the British government that if your courts rule against us and require and disclose what we've done to this man on grounds of national security, we're not going to share intelligence information with you anymore.
Well, Binyan Mohammed is the guy who was actually in the British courtroom when the decision came down yesterday. And basically that decision was to publish the findings of another court which had ruled in his favor. Apparently, in the British system, the security services can persuade the courts, the same thing happens here, to keep certain information secret. And the security system or services in Great Britain persuaded the British judge that ruled in Mr. Mohammed's favor to keep secret what was done to him. He appealed that decision, and yesterday an appellate court said, no more secrets, it's all out there. So what has become of the protestations out of the mouth of Tony Blair himself, out of Bush administration officials themselves, out of Obama administration officials themselves, that this guy was making all this up, when now in a contested case, a British court has ruled in his favor?
Well, it really goes to show the lie of this whole torture regime. And it's really, the time's come, Judge, for this country to confront that this torture that's been going on wasn't an act of a few bad apples, or that it was an aberration, or that it was accidental. We've got to confront the distinct reality that this was a systematic system that the U.S. government put into place, starting over there with the Office of Legal Counsel, where they got those torture memos authorizing this type of thing, right, continuing all the way through. There's a great book on this by Alfred McCoy, a professor, on this whole torture regime that the CIA and the military has been doing for decades, and this is just the culmination of it.
Are you surprised that the Obama administration is continuing to do what a British court found the Bush administration did? I don't know if they're still doing bodily mutilations by Moroccan secret police, but the Obama administration, as you pointed out, fiercely resisted this. and threatened its counterparts in Great Britain to put pressure on this judge not to rule in favor of Binyan Mohammed, otherwise it would damage the relationship between the two countries. When Barack Obama was Senator Barack Obama, he spoke out against this stuff. Now, as President Barack Obama, he supports it. I guess the view is different when you're inside the Oval Office, Jake.
Well, and I think it also shows the power of the CIA and the military-industrial complex over even presidents that promise to end this type of thing. Obama is just a continuation of the Bush regime, and it's really going to take the conscience of the American people to say, we want a full investigation into these lies, into this torture regime. This is not what this country's all about. It never should have been what this country was all about. And it's time to put a stop to it. And, you know, the other interesting part of this British court decision is that it seems to me like they're ordering the British officials to disclose any role that they had in the torture of this guy. Because when he was getting cut, his body was getting cut on in Morocco, he heard some people with speaking English there.
Yes, he did. Yes, he did. And that's really the crux of this. You know, regrettably, it's horrible. American courts have rejected lawsuits against American torturers, but British courts have not. And it's hard to say he was fortunate, because what he went through was among the most horrific torture imaginable because of the bodily mutilation. But he was fortunate that he was able to identify, as you say, at least by sound, the presence of British officials. That gave British courts jurisdiction. That allowed the judge to rule on the case, and that will now open up a Pandora's box for at least the British people who conspired with American CIA to torture this guy and others. Where do you think this ends, Jake?
Well, I don't know. It's very interesting, though, but because I read in the paper today that they're already investigating an M15 agent who might have participated in his interrogation. So, you know, the way it always ends is through multiple investigations that lead to nowhere. Hopefully, this might be an opening that starts opening, as you call it, Pandora's box into everything this government's done. Another interesting aspect of this decision, Judge, is that they focused in on these sensory deprivation and sleep deprivation and other psychological means of torture that the CIA acquired from the North Koreans during the Korean War. And the British court referred to that as having violated British rules against torture and British law against torture. And it's good to see them focusing in on that point.
Guess what? The British law and the American law are the same. Jake Hornberger, chair of the Future of Freedom Foundation. It's a pleasure. Thanks for joining us.
Thank you, Judge.